Story number 1. Jim walked into a store which had a sign outside, "Second-hand clothes bought and sold." He was carrying an old pair of pants and asked the owner of the store, "How much will you give me for these?" The man looked at them and then said rudely, $2. "What?" said Jim. "I had guessed they were worth at least 5. "No," said the man. "They aren't worth a penny more than $2. "Are you sure?" asked Jim. "Very sure," said the man. "Well," said Jim, taking $2 out of his pocket, "here's your money. These pants were hanging outside your store with a price tag that said $6.50. But I thought that was too much money, so I wanted to make sure how much they were really worth." Then he walked out of the store with a pair of pants and disappeared before the surprised store owner could think of anything to say.
Now answer these questions. 1. What was bought and sold in the store that Jim went into? 2. What did Jim take into the store with him? 3. How much did the owner of the store offer Jim for them? 4. Where did Jim find the pants? 5. How much was the owner asking for them? 6. How much did Jim pay for them? Story number 2. Mrs. Green was the manager of a large company, and she frequently had to have meetings with other business people in a room in her building. She did not smoke at all, but many of the other people at the meetings did, so she often found the air during the meetings terrible. One day, after an hour, her throat and eyes were sore, and she was coughing a lot. So she called a big air conditioning company and asked them to work out how much it would cost to keep the air of the meeting room in her building really clean. After a few days, the air conditioning company sent in 2 estimates for Mrs. Green to choose from. One estimate was for $5,000 to put in new air conditioning, and the other was for $5 for a sign which said, "No smoking."
Now answer these questions. 1. Why did Mrs. Green have to have meetings with business people? 2. Why did she often find the air in the meetings terrible? 3. What did it do to her? 4. What did she do about it? 5. What did the air conditioning company do? 6. What did Mrs. Green have to choose between? Story number 3. A lot of boys and girls in Western countries are wearing the same kinds of clothes, and many of them have long hair, so it is often difficult to tell whether they are boys or girls. One day, an old gentleman went for a walk in a park in... "My goodness," the old man said to the person who was sitting next to him on the bench. "Do you see that person with the loose pants and long hair? Is it a boy or a girl?" "A girl," said his neighbor. "She's my daughter." "Oh," the old gentleman said quickly. "Please forgive me. I didn't know that you were her mother." "I'm not," said the other person. "I'm her father."
Now answer these questions. 1. What did the old gentleman see on the other side of the pond? 2. Why didn't the old gentleman know if it was a boy or a girl? 3. Who did he ask? 4. What did this person answer? 5. What did the old gentleman say then? 6. And what did the person answer? Story number 4. A young boy was playing with a ball in the street. He kicked it too hard, and it broke the window of a house and fell inside. A lady came to the window with the ball and shouted at the young boy, so he ran away, but he still wanted his ball back. A few minutes later he returned and knocked at the door of the house, and when the lady answered it, he said, "My father's going to come and fix your window very soon." After a few more minutes, a man came to the door with tools in his hand. So the lady let the boy take his ball away. When the man finished fixing the window, he said to the lady, "That will cost you exactly $10. "But aren't you the father of that young boy?" the woman asked, looking surprised. "No," he answered, equally surprised. "Aren't you his mother?"
Now answer these questions. 1. How did the young boy lose his ball? 2. Why did he run away? 3. And why did he come back? 4. Why did the lady let him take his ball away? 5. Who did the lady think the man was who came to fix the window? 6. Who did he think the lady was? Story number 5. Mr. and Mrs. Scott moved to a small town, and they made arrangements at the local bank to open an account in both their names. But Mr. Scott was a businessman and always worked during the times that the bank was open, so his wife was the one who usually went there when they needed money. Then one day Mr. Scott had a vacation, so he went to the bank, but the bank teller didn't know him and wasn't willing to give him any money until she was sure that he was really Mr. Scott. She said politely, "I know Mrs. Scott, but I don't know you yet. Could you please show me something to prove that you are Mr. Scott?" Mr. Scott looked in his wallet and found some photographs of his wife. He showed them to the teller, and she was satisfied and gave him his money.
Now answer these questions. 1. What kind of account did Mr. and Mrs. Scott open at the bank? 2. Who usually went to the bank to get money? 3. Who went there one day? 4. What did the teller say to Mr. Scott? 5. What did Mr. Scott show the teller to prove who he was? 6. What did the teller do then? Story number 6. Johnny was 9 years old, and he was a very bad boy. But his mother always hoped that he would behave better. Then, one day, After he had come home from school, Johnny's teacher called his mother on the phone and said, "Did you know, Mrs. Perkins, that Johnny saved another boy when he fell into the river while we were out for a walk this morning?" Story number 6. Johnny was 9 years old, and he was a very bad boy. But his mother always hoped that he would behave better. Then, one day, after he had come home from school, Johnny's teacher called his mother on the phone and said, "Did you know, Mrs. Perkins, that Johnny saved another boy when he fell into the river while we were out for a walk this morning?" Mrs. Perkins was very happy when she heard this. She thought, "Johnny's becoming a good boy." Then she turned to him and said, "That was your teacher. Why didn't you tell me you had been such a brave boy and saved one of your friends when he fell into the river this morning?" But Johnny did not look very happy when he heard this. His face became very red, and he said, "Well, I really had to pull him out because I pushed him in."
Now answer these questions. 1. What kind of boy was Johnny? 2. What did Mrs. Perkins hope? 3. What did Johnny's teacher tell his mother? 4. What did his mother think then? 5. What did she say to Johnny? 6. What did he answer? Story number 7. A young boy did not live too far from school, so he used to walk there and back every day. On his way to school, he passed a playground which used to get very wet when it rained. One day, the boy came home very wet. His mother became angry and said, "Don't play in the water on your way home from school." The next day, he came home very wet again, and his mother became even angrier. "I'll tell your father if you come home wet again," she said, "and then he'll punish you." The next day, the young boy was dry when he came home from school. "You were a good boy today," his mother said. "You didn't play in the water." "No," he answered sadly. "There were so many older boys in the water when I got there this afternoon that there wasn't any room for me at all."
Now answer these questions. 1. How did the young boy go to and from school? 2. How did he get wet? 3. How did his mother feel about this? 4. What did she threaten to do if he got wet again? 5. Why was she happy one day? 6. Why wasn't her son wet that day? Story number 8. Mr. Jones moved to another town, and soon he needed a new doctor, so he went to see one. He sat down in the waiting room and looked around. The doctor's degrees were on the wall. Suddenly, Mr. Jones remembered there had been a student with the same name in his class at school, and he had become a doctor. He went in to see the doctor, remembering a young, handsome student, and was sad to see how old and heavy and gray this man looked. However, he said to him, "Good morning, doctor. Did you go to Middletown High School?" The doctor answered, "Yes, I did." "Were you there from 1942 to 1946?" Mr. Jones asked. "Yes, I was," the doctor answered. "How did you know?" Mr. Jones laughed and said, "You were in my class." "Oh?" the doctor said, looking at him carefully for a few moments. "What were you teaching?"
Now answer these questions. 1. Why did Mr. Jones go to a new doctor? 2. What did he see on the walls of the waiting room? 3. What did Mr. Jones remember? 4. What were the two questions that Mr. Jones asked the doctor? 5. How did Mr. Jones know that the doctor had been at that school during those years? 6. What did the doctor think? Story number 9. The college had a very good football team, and its best player was a student who always had trouble in school. Then one year, the dean of the college said that the player would have to leave because he had cheated on an exam. The football coach immediately went to the dean to try to persuade him to let the student stay in school. The dean showed him two answer papers. "This one is Susan's paper. She's the best student in the class," he said. "And this one's your football players. They're exactly the same." The football player sat at the next desk and just copied from her. "But maybe she copied from him," the coach said. "You can't prove it was the other way." "Look at this," the dean said. Susan didn't know the answer to this question, so she wrote, "I don't know." And your football player wrote, "Neither do I."
Now answer these questions. 1. Why did the dean want the student to leave the college? 2. Why did the coach want him to stay? 3. What did the dean show the coach? 4. And what did the dean say to him? 5. What did the coach suggest then? 6. And what did the dean answer? Story number 10. Mr. Young owned his own business and worked very hard. His wife was afraid that he would get sick if he continued like that, so she often tried to get him to take a vacation. At last she managed to persuade him to do this, but she was afraid that he might not be able to enjoy his vacation quietly. So before they left, Mrs. Young went to see her husband's secretary. She said to her, "My husband needs a vacation very much, so whatever happens, please don't bother him with telegrams and letters about business problems while we're away. Just wait till we get back." After Mr. and Mrs. Young had been away about a week, Mr. Young received a letter from his secretary, which said, "Something terrible has happened to your business, but I'm not going to bother you with it now while you're enjoying your vacation."
Now answer these questions. 1. Who did Mr. Young work for? 2. What was his wife afraid of? 3. What did she want her husband to do? 4. What did she ask his secretary to do? 5. What did the secretary write in her letter to Mr. Young? 6. Do you think he enjoyed his vacation after that?